to week 4, and we're going to talk this week about looking at ethics and how they apply to our work in the human services field. One of the things that you'll be looking at this week is you're going to look at several ethical standards for different areas in human services. There is a link for the Code of Ethics for the American Counseling Association, and there's also a link for the Code of Ethics for the Association for Social Work. And you'll see that they're very similar, but there's also differences between those. I wanted to, in today's video, I just wanted to go through and touch base with you about some of the things in the PowerPoint that you're going to be taking a look at for this week's learning resources. And one is we just want to talk about ethics in general, and what do we mean when we talk about ethics. And I'm sure it's not a new topic, but essentially what we want to start off with is ethics are our set of rules or guidelines that we need to practice in our field in working with other individuals. And the key purpose of ethics, in my determination, is to protect our clients and to better serve our clients. So you'll see ethics from everything from how we market ourselves as professionals to multiple relationships with clients, to doing bartering, how we accept fees for services. There's a lot of standards that are put into place, like I said, to protect our clients. When we're talking about ethics, they're tied to laws, but they're not always. A law is not always ethical, or an ethic is not always something that's required by law. We know that our laws are things that we have to follow that's set by our city, our state, our country. Things like the speed limit, or you can't take things that don't belong to you. Ethics are a standard, as I mentioned, a standard that we have in completing our practice, our standard of way of interacting with others as a professional. And what you'll see are there's sometimes when ethics and laws do cross. For instance, if you have someone who acts unethically with a client and has let's say, a sexual relationship with them, it's very likely in some of those situations that it could be a legal violation as well as an ethical violation. Those things can be, like I said, can cross, and sometimes they can be totally separate. Also, we're just going to go through quickly with some of the slides. You'll see it talks about professional monitoring of practice. We're going to be talking more in the next couple of weeks about regulatory boards and how that works within the human services field. And then some key terms with ethical decision making. We talk about community standards, look at what is considered reasonable behavior when a case involves malpractice, professionalism, looking at how the relationship to ethical behavior is, can you act unprofessional and still not act unethical? That's a very good question. Can you be unprofessional yet not be unethical? That might be a question that we look at further for this week. And then standards of ethical practice. We have what they call mandatory ethics. These are things that you must follow in order to be in compliance with the standards for your profession. And then they have aspirational ethics, and that's when you have someone who really goes above the minimal and tries to really contribute to the profession. An example is someone who provides pro bono services for free, or works in some community activist groups, or does some type of social project in their community. Basic guidelines in making decisions ethically and morally. It gives us autonomy, and that is central in the work that we're doing, where essentially that is we want to promote self-determination for our clients. That is working to help our clients become independent, to be able to manage problems on their own. The other one is beneficence, which is to do good for others and promote the well-being of others. Non-malfeasant is to avoid doing harm. And I think that's a real key in our ethical, or something to hold on to when you're thinking about ethics, is to do no harm. Justice, to be fair and equal to others, to treat others justly. And we'll talk more about that when we look at issues of diversity in the field. And just moving right along, I think probably there's several different models of ethical decision making, and I really don't see that as something that we need to worry ourselves about as we get into the idea of ethics. What I want you to take away from this presentation, is that your field of choice, which in human services, whether as a social work, psychology, case management, counseling, your field of practice has a code of or standard code of ethics that you are required to follow. One of the key factors in all of those standards is to do no harm to your client. And you will see that the standard of ethics covers a lot of issues involving harm that can be done to the client. And you may be thinking, well, how can I harm my client? When you're looking at some of the situations, you'll see, for instance, ethics regarding multiple relationships. There is the issue of potential harm when a therapist or a human service professional gets involved in multiple relationships with clients or inappropriate relationships with clients. That can be difficult for the client to process what's going on. It definitely creates boundary issues and impacts the therapeutic relationship. So there's lots of things to consider. This week is really just an introduction into ethics. I want to challenge each of you just to start thinking about ethical issues and how those things might present in your career choice. Ethical dilemmas, ethical struggles are something that we're all going to deal with as we work with human beings. Working with human beings, nothing is black or white. You have to take into consideration the entire needs, strengths, weaknesses of the individual, and sometimes your choice is going to be different based on that. But our ethics does give us a really good standard to follow, and it gives us a standard that we have to be responsive to, and we have to respond to, and make sure that we work within that framework. So I look forward to talking with you more in class about ethics. I hope you have a great week.